Welcome to our deep dive into Freakonomics. A Rogue Economist Explores the Hidden Side of Everything by Stephen D. Levitt and Stephen J. Dubner. This book, it's not your typical economics read.
Right.
It throws out all that dry theory and just uses data to peek behind the curtain of everyday life.
Absolutely.
We're going to uncover some truly surprising connections and challenge some conventional wisdom along the way.
I think you'll find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew.
Oh yeah, for instance.
Yeah.
Levitt argues that the legalization of abortion in the U.S. Played a role in the sharp decline of crime rates in the 1990s.
That's right. A bold claim.
That's a bold claim.
Yeah.
How does he connect those two things?
Well, he dives deep into the data.
Okay.
Compares crime rates before and after Roe v. Wade.
Okay.
He also looks at what happened in Romania when abortion was banned in 1966. The children born after that ban faced more challenges growing up and were more likely to turn to crime.
So he's suggesting that unwanted children born into difficult circumstances have a higher probability of engaging in criminal activity later in life.
That's exactly his argument.
Interesting. So by reducing the number of unwanted births, you indirectly reduce crime.
Yeah, it's like this ripple effect spanning generations.
A ripple effect spanning generations. But weren't there other popular explanations for the crime drop?
Sure.
Like more police or stricter gun control?
Yeah, there were, and Levitt debunks those theories with data.
Okay.
He shows that the decline in crime actually started before many of those measures were even in place.
Interesting.
It really makes you wonder about the unforeseen consequences of policy decisions.
Absolutely. There's always a deeper story, and often it's the data that tells it. Speaking of hidden stories, this book also tackles how experts use information to wield power.
Yes. Think about the Ku Klux Klan.
Okay.
Their secrecy was a source of their power. They thrived on fear and misinformation.
Right, and it was Stetson Kennedy who infiltrated the Klan and exposed their secrets.
Yeah.
That ultimately weakened them.
That's right.
This reminds me of the point the book makes about real estate agents.
Precisely, real estate agents.
Okay.
Like, the Klan use information asymmetry to their advantage. They may have knowledge about a property or the market that they don't fully share with their clients.
Interesting.
Influencing home prices for a quicker sale.
So as consumers, how do we arm ourselves against this kind of information manipulation?
Well, the book points to the internet as a great equalizer. You know, it has made information more accessible, empowering consumers and increasing transparency in many industries.
I see.
You can see this in how the price of life insurance has declined.
The internet as a weapon against information hoarding.
Right.
Who would have thought?
It's an interesting point.
But it all circles back to incentives.
Yeah.
Freakonomics digs into how incentives drive behavior in unexpected places, like a Chicago drug gang.
Levitt, with the help of a sociologist embedded in the gang, had access to their financial records.
Wow.
He discovered that the gang's structure, payment schemes, and career paths were remarkably similar to a legitimate business like McDonald's.
I'm trying to picture the board meetings and performance reviews.
Right.
So they had hierarchies and bottom-rung employees facing the highest risks for the lowest rewards.
Exactly. The incentive to make it big is there, just like in any corporate environment.
Wow.
But the reality is that most of those at the bottom stay there.
Yeah.
It reminds us that those hidden incentives are at play everywhere and often influence our decisions whether we realize it or not.
It really makes you question what motivates people in all areas of life, even parenting. The book challenges conventional wisdom about raising successful children.
They use data from the Early Childhood Longitudinal Study, which tracked the academic progress of thousands of children. And it turns out factors like having a highly educated parent strongly correlated with higher test scores.
Interesting.
But family structure, whether a child came from a traditional two-parent home, didn't have a significant impact.
That's surprising. So it's not about conforming to a specific family model, but about creating an environment that supports learning.
Exactly.
What else did the study find?
Well, the mother's age at the time of the first child's birth played a role, with children of older mothers tending to score higher. Having books in the home, unsurprisingly, also showed a correlation with better academic performance.
So those bedtime stories really do make a difference.
It seems so.
What about all those enrichment activities we hear so much about?
Interestingly, regularly taking a child to museums didn't correlate with higher test scores. And while doing homework did have a positive correlation, the impact was relatively small.
That might ease the homework battles in some households?
Yeah, perhaps.
But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Freakonomics covers so much more, including the fascinating world of baby names.
Right. The book dives into how baby names can be indicators of socioeconomic status and how these naming trends trickle down through society. But let's delve deeper into that in part 2. Welcome back to our deep dive into Freakonomics. Before the break, we were discussing the fascinating connection between baby names and socioeconomic status.
Right. You were about to tell us how our names might reveal more than we think.
Well, using data from California Levitt demonstrates a strong correlation between specific names and families with higher education and income levels. For example, girls' names like Eleanor, Aviva, and Clementine were more common in these families.
And what about the boys? Were there similar trends?
Absolutely. Names like Asher, Jasper, and Finn were prevalent among boys from these backgrounds. On the other hand, names like Amber Heather and Kayla for girls and Justin Brandon and Cody for boys were more common in families with lower education levels.
It's interesting to think about how those naming patterns might play out over time.
Well, Levitt suggests that these trends trickle down through society. Names that are popular among higher socioeconomic groups eventually become more mainstream, and then new, unique names emerge at the top.
Like a fashion cycle, but for baby names.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder if parents are consciously or subconsciously choosing names that they believe will benefit their children.
It's not necessarily about consciously predetermining their children's future. It's more about reflecting cultural trends and social signaling, you know?
So our names can be a subtle signal about our background and social standing.
Yeah.
But what about names that are tied to race? Does the book explore that aspect as well?
It does, and this is where things get a bit more complex. The data shows a clear connection between certain names and race, which unfortunately can lead to real-world consequences.
What kind of consequences are we talking about?
Studies have shown that individuals with names perceived as black-sounding often face discrimination in areas like job applications. It's a sad reality that unconscious bias can influence even seemingly objective processes.
It's eye-opening to consider how even something as personal as our name can become a barrier to opportunity.
That's right. Freakonomics encourages us to acknowledge these uncomfortable truths and recognize how names can become a proxy for race carrying more weight than we might realize.
This book has certainly challenged a lot of my assumptions. It's incredible how these seemingly disparate topics, crime, real estate, parenting, and even baby names, all connect back to economics in some way.
And that's the beauty of Levitt's approach. He takes this unconventional, data-driven lens and applies it to everyday life, revealing these hidden connections and surprising truths.
It's all about thinking differently, questioning the status quo, and being open to unexpected explanations.
Exactly. Freakonomics encourages us to embrace critical thinking, question everything, and remember that incentives often hidden drive behavior in all areas of life.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. What would you say is the most memorable takeaway from Freakonomics?
For me, it's the concept of unintended consequences. Whether it's the impact of legalized abortion on crime rates or the way a name can shape someone's opportunities, our actions often have ripple effects that extend far beyond our intentions.
It's a reminder to think about the bigger picture and consider the long-term consequences of our choices.
And to be open to the idea that the answers we seek might be found in the most unexpected places. Freakonomics equips us with the tools of data and critical thinking to navigate this complex world.
It encourages us to look beyond the surface and uncover those hidden connections that shape our lives.
And to embrace the adventure of challenging conventional wisdom and uncovering the truth.
Well said. This deep dive has been a true eye-opener. I'm already thinking about the world in a different way.
That's the power of Freakonomics. It sparks a curiosity and a desire to see the world through a new lens.
And hopefully it inspires our listeners to do the same. Before we wrap up, we have one final section to discuss, focusing on the book's overall message and what Levitt and Dubner want us to take away from this intellectual journey. We'll dive into that right after a quick message from our sponsors. We're back with the final part of our deep dive into Freakonomics. You know, one thing that really stuck with me is this idea that incentives drive behavior.
Oh, absolutely. It's a recurring theme throughout the book, and arguably one of its most compelling takeaways. Levitt argues that if you can understand the incentives at play, both the obvious and the hidden, you can gain a much deeper understanding of why people make the choices they do.
And sometimes those incentives aren't always apparent, like we were talking about before with real estate agents. They're motivated to close deals quickly, even if it means their clients get a slightly less favorable outcome.
Right, exactly. And Freakonomics really encourages us to become these incentive detectives, to think critically about these hidden motivations, not just in real estate, but in every aspect of our lives.
So how do we become better at spotting those hidden incentives? Where do we even begin?
Well, I think it starts with curiosity and asking the right questions, like why are things the way they are? What are the underlying motivations driving people's decisions? Once you start asking those questions, you'll be amazed at the patterns that you begin to see.
It's about looking beyond the surface and considering the forces at play beneath the obvious.
Precisely. And Freakonomics provides us with a framework for doing just that. It arms us with the tools of data and critical thinking, empowering us to make more informed decisions and navigate the world with a deeper understanding.
It's not just about understanding the world, but using that knowledge to make more informed decisions in our own lives.
Right. And that's what makes this book so relevant, even years after it was first published. The insights that it offers are timeless, applicable to countless situations.
It's a book that encourages you to think differently, challenge conventional wisdom, and perhaps even see the world as this grand puzzle waiting to be solved.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the true beauty of Freakonomics. It's an invitation to explore, to question, to never stop learning, and to always be open to new perspectives.
Well, this deep dive has been a fascinating exploration of Freakonomics. We've unpacked the core arguments, analyzed the data, and even grappled with the ethical considerations of some of Levitt's more controversial claims.
Yeah, it's been a real journey of intellectual discovery, and I hope our listeners feel inspired to delve deeper into these ideas themselves.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, we want to leave our listeners with a challenge inspired by Freakonomics. Go out into the world and find your own hidden connections. Look for those unexpected patterns, the surprising correlations. Ask those tough questions. And never shy away from challenging conventional wisdom. You never know what fascinating insights you might uncover.
Then be sure to share your discoveries with us. We'd love to hear about the unexpected connections you find in your own Freakonomics explorations.